Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the January hearing of the Somerville Historic Preservation Commission. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission will be conducted by remote participation. Recording of these proceedings can be accessed at any time using the registration link at the top of this agenda. It is January 25th, 6:50, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. The first order of business is the memorandum of agreement for 19 through 23 Allen Street and 27 Allen Street. Has everybody read this, or do you want to take a moment to look it over for anybody?
So Ms. White, the address and the first line of whereas, where it references 2729 Forest Street, that will be corrected. Yes?
That is correct. I got your email on that this afternoon, and sorry, you do a find or replace and you think you've caught all of them, but yes, that will be amended. Correct.
I had no particular comments. It's sad to see the building go, but looks like we're getting interpretive signs, photo documentation, architectural drawings, and salvaging in a nutshell.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And this is a demolition delay that would expire when?
I believe they expire, I want to say it's March. I'm pretty sure it's March this year.
2 months away. All right.
Yeah, the preferably preserved date was March 16th of 2021.
Yep, so they'll be March 17th.
Okay, this is after it got extended to 12 months, right? Given the situation, I will accept this. I have no other comments on it. Anybody else have any comments, or anyone still reading?
Nope.
Good.
All right. Well, then I would entertain a motion that we accept this memorandum of agreement.
I move that we accept the memorandum of agreement for 19-27 Allen Street.
I second that.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, if I could just jump in really quickly. It's for, unfortunately, a little bit of a misprint on the agenda, but it's actually 21 to 23 Allen Street and 27 Allen Street.
Thank you.
Yes.
Note that correction.
So I move that we vote to accept the memorandum of agreement for 19-23 Allen Street and 27 Allen Street.
I second that.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We'll do the roll call in the order as I see on my screen, which would be Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Mr. Bauer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Bingham,
Yes.
Mr. Wiley,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So that's that.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. The next item is a request to withdraw for 38 Laurel Street. And I guess we just need to vote on that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so the case is HPC DMO 2021.05, 38 Laurel Street. Applicant Chang Yang, owner same as applicant. Proposal was to demolish principal structure. The applicant has requested to withdraw the application. Yes, I would I can move for this. I would move, propose that we accept that request to withdraw their application.
There needs to be a second.
I'll
Yes.
second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Mr. Bauer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Bingham,
Yes.
Mr. Wiley,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Okay. And then the next order of business is a series of advisory reviews that we have for CPA funding projects. And this is not something we need to take a vote on, but I guess it's for us to discuss and add input. Has anybody read these? They're quite lengthy. It's like 30+ pages each. So depends on how much into the weeds you want to get. They've been heavily gone over and created by the legal department and various entities like that. But does anybody have anything they want to talk about with those questions?
Mr. Chairman, it would be helpful actually if staff could walk us through what seem like the most important provisions.
Sure. Beth, would you like to do that?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Bauer. So do me a favor, because I can't have my agenda up in front of me at the moment because of seeing all of you on the screen right now. So could you read off each of the addresses for me, please, so I can do them in the proper order?
Sure.
The first one is 59 Cross Street.
So 59 Cross Street, this one already has, this is owned as a Grace Baptist Church. This property already has a preservation restriction on it. Sorry, I take that back. This is the preservation restriction it needs to have on it. So a lot of these projects have been going on with CPA funds for quite some years. However, we've had a lot of turnover with CPA managers and whatnot. So finally, a lot of these are being finalized. They are well into, I believe, the second phase of the work that they're doing on that property. They're also a local historic district. However, we still require a preservation restriction in perpetuity for these projects when they're looking for CPA money of this magnitude. This is different than the small property owner fund. So one of the reasons it also takes as much time as it does too is it needs to be reviewed by the legal department. We do have a consultant that helps us draft the initial version. It goes through preservation planning, but it also must go through several iterations with the Massachusetts Historical Commission. And because this is a preservation restriction in perpetuity, they are required to sign off on it. So we've had to incorporate a lot of the feedback from them. So this preservation restriction, as with the others on your list, I guess I could sum them all up this way. They are preservation restrictions in perpetuity on the exterior of the structure, and that's the entire envelope of the structure, not just what's visible from the public way. So when these applicants come back in the future to make changes to their property, not only do they have to adhere to the local historic district design guidelines, if they're making any changes of a major nature as well, they're usually major and minor alterations that are allowed, they're going to need to, of course, come back to the Historic Preservation Commission for their review and approval. And that means you will be reviewing and approving changes that they make to the exterior of their structure, even the ones that are not visible from a public way. So it actually broadens the scope of your review a little bit. But again, for anybody receiving historic preservation funds, they are required to have a preservation restriction in perpetuity. Now that we have Roberta Cameron as our CPA manager, she has been diligently working through getting a lot of these finalized and a lot of them in front of you. So this is the first batch, and you'll be seeing some more coming through in the next couple of meetings. Really quickly, even if let's say an applicant is looking for money to do work on their roof, the preservation restriction is not just put on the roof, it's actually put on the entire envelope of the structure. And that is one of the ways that we ensure that the public money when it is spent, that there is protection and there is a responsibility that's placed on the property owner for receiving these public funds that they would not otherwise have access to.
Thank you. And my understanding is that they're all very similar, except that one of them, the Westwood Road property, also includes some language about interior parts.
Yeah, that is one that's a little bit different. And they have received funds before. As you know, that you reviewed the, initially it was an exterior lift, or I think it was beyond, it wasn't a Lula, but several years ago, before my time with the city, it was a type of lift that they were looking to do. And then they had to change that to a full elevator. So you've reviewed that. They've received money for that. That went to court. They were successful in persevering with that court challenge. They have come in for additional EPA funds, some of which include like whether it's restoration of collection or climate control to protect a collection, things such as there was, Mr. Bingham, you'll remember this, it was last year, it was I forget if it was a security system or a fire system that they also received some money for. So the intent is to protect their collection and to protect not just the exterior of the building, but the interior as well. Hence why there is now, in addition to the existing preservation restriction, there is a preservation restriction now on a couple of interior components of the building as well, to protect the public contribution to this property. The only other one that you have seen over the years that that has had interior features protected, and that was at the request of the recipient of the CPA funds, was for 83 Belmont Street. It is an individual property. It received quite a bit of money some years ago, and the property owners insisted that the preservation restriction include a lot of detailed elements on the interior of the house. So that is the only other one up until this point, in addition to now Westwood Road, that includes interior, that we'll also review when there are changes.
It was actually a pretty
Was there
small
not one
amount of
also
money for,
placed on the post office down in Union Square for the internal mural?
There's a preservation restriction on that in general, but it's not. It is not a recipient of CPA funds. But there is a preservation restriction on the WPA era mural that is held, I believe, by the Massachusetts Historical Commission itself. And they just don't hold preservation restrictions anymore because they did not have the staff to do it. Yep. Sorry, Mr. Bauer, did you also have a question?
just on the Belmont property, it was actually a pretty small amount of money. They just, was money for them to restore a stained glass window that had been damaged during the fire.
Correct.
So we
Correct.
thought that this was actually quite a good deal for us to get a restriction on the whole building, including interiors, for
Yep.
pretty small money. We were happy
Yep.
that they wanted to do it, and we were happy to do it.
Yep.
And just so I understand, this is, I'm just reading this up front, this is an easement held by the city through the Historic Preservation Commission. So we are the enforcing body, if you call us that.
Yes, that's correct.
And so it's on us to take any kind of action. And I'm assuming or hoping that our legal department coordinates all the fine-tuned language regarding notification periods and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's not-
so, right, that'll all go through. If there's an issue, like for example, if there's an issue that you happen to notice in the field that we have not, you bring it to staff's attention. And whenever there is an issue, it would all go through staff, and staff would work directly with the legal department, ISD as necessary, et cetera. But yes, we involve the legal department very heavily in this. And so they are the primary eyes on these things, internally. I mean, certainly from a preservation and historic perspective, I look at that too, quite heavily, but we very heavily rely on the legal department for this and their assistance in how to proceed forward.
Okay. Yeah, because this gets there's a lot of word verbiage. Like I'm noticing that the one here already has another preservation restriction agreement on it.
Mm-hmm.
Right, with the Mass Historic.
Right. Right. I'm laughing because initially you said there are a lot of words, and I would agree.
Yeah.
There are a lot of words.
I talk real good.
Glad to know.
I meant to say verbiage.
That's fine.
I think this is fine. I don't have any comments about it. It's great. It's an additional layer of protection for these properties.
Right.
Who else? Anybody else have any thoughts? We're not going for a vote on this, so let's just speak now or forever hold your peace.
The only thing you would need to vote on is to vote to, to sign off on them.
Oh, okay, so we do need to vote. All right.
Yep.
Well, is there a motion that we accept or sign off on this agreement?
I move that we agree to have Eric sign, have Chair Parks sign the advisory review, or the advisory review, the preservation.
Restrictions. Yep.
Thank you. Preservation restrictions for 277 Broadway, 59 Cross Street, 1 Westwood Road, and 404 Broadway.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
I second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Roll call. Mr. Salvi,
Yes.
Mr. Bauer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Bingham,
Yes.
Mr. Wiley,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So, onward. Okay, we are now up to alterations to local historic district properties. And do I understand correctly that the 49 through 55 Davis Square has asked to continue?
Yes, so the applicant has requested to continue to the February meeting.
Okay.
We will need a motion on that, though.
Yes. Can we have a motion to continue that case? Oh, actually, sorry, before we go, this is HPC ALT 2021.54, 49 through 55 Davis Square, applicant Somerville Theater, owner BF Somerville Properties LLC. And the request is to continue their case till the February hearing. Do we have a motion to accept that?
I move that we continue this case to next month.
Second?
I second that motion.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Mr. Bauer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Bingham,
Yes.
and Mr. Wiley.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, that is continued. And the next case is HPC ALT 2021.54, 6 Aldersey Street. Applicant is Mario Sousa. Owner is Teresa McCusker. And the application is alteration to an existing deck. Do we have an applicant here for this project?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have Tria McCusker here and Mario Sousa. Let me.
Good evening. Are they unmuted?
Yes, so
Yes.
they have just been unmuted, so they just need to unmute themselves.
I think I just unmuted myself.
Good evening, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you? Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
How about just introduce your project? Let us know what you're doing.
So my name is Mario Souza. I'm the contractor on the project. The customer is Teresa McCusker. Teresa had an old deck that used to have a roof structure over it. Right before COVID hit, a tree fell and destroyed that roof structure. We decided to just clean it up and get it out of the way, especially with the cost of lumber being so high at that point. We just put in a temporary awning. At this point, we're looking to rebuild the roof structure over the deck.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who'd like to speak for this, about this case?
Anyone who would like to speak on this case, please raise your hand and we will go ahead and unmute you. All right, I don't see anyone yet. I'm going to do one more pass through. All right, Chair, we have no one who's raised their hands at this time.
Well, with that, then we'll close the public comment portion of the case. And take it up as commission. Does anybody have any thoughts on this? Y'all had a chance to look it over?
Mr. Chair, from the materials provided, I'm having trouble understanding just where on the house this covered deck is going to be. That would be helpful in thinking about it.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Certainly. Where on the house is this covered deck going to be?
It would be on, looking at the house, it would be the rear left side of the house.
That's looking at it from Alderton Street.
Correct. It would be on the rear left side of the house.
And if you look at page 3 of the staff report,
Yeah.
there's an aerial satellite view with a red arrow that's kind of pointing at the, I assume that's the right spot there. It's like a little,
That is the correct spot.
okay. It's,
So
sorry.
You see
I was just going to say the
awning
one question that I have is about the style of the supports, and whether, just sort of very straightforward, plain supports make best sense, or if the house should take something that has a turn silhouette to it. I don't know if others have particular thoughts on it. It's not a prominent structure. It's some of it's obscured by the larger section of the house at the front towards the street, but just wondering whether the profile of the supports seems appropriate.
Yeah, my feeling, so this is just to back up. This is one of these situations where it's a back porch that's minimally visible from a public way, but it is visible. And my take on those back stairs is, you go back quite a bit, those were always kind of done in a more utilitarian way. And they kind of to dress it up a bit more for the ones that were the street-facing porches.
Mm-hmm.
As my personal feeling is that I'm a little more okay with plain columns or posts on those. I have a personal issue that sometimes the prescriptive building code requires 6x6 posts, even when you could get by with a 4x4, but that requires structural engineering, which is kind of a step too far. But as to the profile of the posts, I personally don't have a big issue with the square ones in the way back like that. I can tell you what I don't want to see is I'm looking at the picture of the former railing. I'm looking at the proposal, and it seems like you're intending to do something that's more as proper balusters between a top rail and a foot rail, as opposed to the previous design we had where it was just little balusters that were side nailed into the side of 2x4s. Is that your intention to do a more traditional balustrade with a top rail and a foot rail?
That is correct. Something a little dressier than what's there now, and something that's appealing, especially as you said, from the side view where you're looking from the street.
Okay.
And as I asked my question, I looked at my own side porch on my 1871 mansard Victorian that's set back. It's a very similar location to this on this house. And those are my supports they're very plain, straight, no turns whatsoever. So, so Eric, Chair Parks, your point is well taken.
That's just my feeling. I don't know if anybody else on the commission, how their sentiments are with that.
That seems right to me. More often than not, the back is plainer than the front.
Correct.
I think overall, this is an improvement over the deck that was there also. So, I have no particular comments other than that. Anybody else?
So just one thought, this is I'm looking at, I think, page 9 and 8, which shows a canvas awning over the deck. Is this the same deck that we're talking about? It had a roof that got knocked down?
Yep, that is the same deck. That is the canvas awning that we temporarily put in place so they could enjoy the deck during COVID and during, 2x8s and 2x10s were at like $50 a piece. That is the same deck, but that will be coming down, and the roof structure, the permanent roof structure, will be going back up if approved by you folks. And you can see the old ledger board that was there prior.
Right.
If there are no other questions or comments, I would move that we vote to approve the proposed work.
I second that.
All in favor of approving the project for 6 Aldersey Street?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Roll call, Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Mr. Bauer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Bingham,
Yes.
and Mr. Wiley.
Yes.
All right. There you have it, folks. Move your project forward. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Aye.
Okay, now we are up to determinations of historic significance. And we have 2. Can you refresh my memory? One of these 2 we've since determined isn't actually on our agenda.
Yes, so 720 Broadway, where currently the Lindell's Bakery is, while staff was doing their research into it, we had access to old aerial photographs of the area, and we determined that the building that's currently there was built somewhere in the mid to late 1950s. So it does not meet the threshold to be before the board for demolition review. So we informed the applicant, and they are requesting to withdraw that application.
Oh, mid to late 50s. Okay, I think of the 60s. So that's still, it's still more recent than 75 years. Okay.
Correct.
Do we need to vote on that, or is it just disappear?
Yes, you will need to make a motion to accept the withdrawal.
Although we're actually jumping the gun because that's the second one. I just wanted people to know that one of those 2 cases wasn't going to be heard. Let's just keep things in order. Let's just go with 722 Broadway, because that's the next one on our agenda, which is HPC DMO 2021-29 722 Broadway. The applicant is Camillo Associates LLC. The owner is the same as the applicant in the proposal for the construction. Do we have an applicant here?
So I have unmuted Ann Biggerito. If there's anyone else on your team, Ann, that needs to be unmuted, can you please let me know their names, or if they can raise their hands?
Thank you. Wendy, Attorney Ann Vigorito, 424 Broadway, Somerville. I am joined by Joseph Federa. He is he is the owner, as well as his architect, Christopher Vance. They can stay muted until it's necessary to speak.
And I have unmuted them on our side. So I do recommend, just so the sound quality retains, if they could keep themselves muted until they are ready to speak.
Of course. So good evening, everyone. Ann Vigorito on behalf of the applicant, and as previously discussed, we will not be discussing 720 Broadway this evening. And that's the building that actually housed Lindell's Bakery. So I know, there may have been some folks on regarding that, but as an aside, the Christopher Vance, who's our architect, will discuss a little bit what the perception of a project will be. And I know, and like I said, this is a little bit of an aside. People get worried, Lindell's is kind of a staple or a landmark, we could call it, down in Ball Square. They're not going anywhere. Any new phase construction will include them. And in the process of that construction, they're going to have a new home, I believe, right across the way. So they're not going anywhere, because I know that's always a concern. And there may be people from the public on. So I just wanted to put that out there so they would hopefully put their minds at ease. We don't want any repeats of what happened to Patsy's years back. So the applicant is very conscious of that. So relative to 722, this is a multifamily home. Went through the staff report, wonderful historical knowledge and value here. But there's a little more alterations, I think, than we may have been aware of. I mean, there's quite a bit of replacement. I think all of the windows are replaced. The installation of the storm windows, as we go through everything else, the enclosure of the rear porch. And then there is a connection in the rear to the commercial structure at 720 Broadway. And to me, I think that really has changed the structure of this building. I know it does sit on a street where there are numerous other homes that look very similar, and the streetscape is quite lovely, but I do feel that this particular building has lost a little bit of that historical significance. So I don't know if you would want to hear from our architect Chris Gibbs now about the proposed project, or if you would rather have a discussion first and then have him speak, whatever the board's pleasure may be.
Thank you. We typically don't get too much into what would potentially precede one of these at a significant stage. I mean, we're always curious, but that really shouldn't weigh in our decision at this point.
Of course. I mean, he is here, so I do, pulled him out. If you'd like him to discuss anything, or if you had any questions, you let me know, or Chris is ready to go.
Okay. Thank you. And something before we would proceed with public comment is I didn't really outline the demolition delay process for anybody who's members of the public who haven't been through this before, but in Somerville we have a demolition delay ordinance that is a two-step process. The first is what we're having tonight, which is a review of a property to see if it's deemed significant, which is, as the name implies, if it's significant, if it's worth consideration as an entity that should be kept. If it's voted as significant, then what we do is hold a public hearing the following month to review whether it should be deemed preferably preserved, which is more of a process of weighing the pros and cons of preserving it, what's required to keep it, what's the circumstance around that, the loss or keeping of that property. So the significance portion of this hearing is just sort of like a very, I don't want to say binary, but it's very much a process of like, does this building matter in its own right? Is it nice? Is it significant? Is it contributing? That sort of thing. So plenty of cases go through with a yes in the first hearing and no on the second, or yes on both of them. And if it's deemed preferably preserved, then it starts an 18-month process during which we discuss with the owner options for preserving it. If it becomes clear that it's not going to be kept, as happened with an earlier case this evening, then we come to an agreement about some form of either memorializing the building or documenting it or incorporating portions of it in a future project or things like that. So it's not necessarily that the project is stopped for 18 months. We've had cases where people have managed to keep the building and work it in with the project, or any number of options. So that's where this is. And with that out of the way, I would like to ask if anybody and members of the public would like to speak about this.
Any members of the public who would like to speak on 722 Broadway, please raise your hand and I will go ahead and unmute you. All right, I see Bill Fleming first. So I'm going to unmute him. He did put his hand down very quickly.
Hi there, sorry, I didn't know which way it was up or down. I'm a resident, I grew up on Bristol Road. And I'm actually selling the house I grew up with, and so there's definitely a sentimentality about Lindell's. The question earlier is that you said that the building was built after 1950, is that correct?
Correct. And just as we go forward, everyone, right now public comment is only for 722 Broadway. But yes, so 720 Broadway does not meet the minimum threshold to have to come before this board and for the board to have purview over the demolition of that building because it was built in the mid to late 1950s.
What is the years that would be a criteria for having this committee review it?
It must be 75 years of age or older.
Okay. Does this mean that there are no other committees within or groups within the city of Somerville that won't, are there others that will evaluate the possible demolition of it?
Depending on whether or not it's by right, it will be going before ISD no matter what, but it may go before the zoning board of appeals, it may go before planning board. I don't know what their plan is. That is later down the road and has no bearing in this meeting. So if you do not have comments on 722 Broadway, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next comment.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, does anyone else have comments on 722 Broadway? Please raise your hand. All right, I see Francis Farley. Francis, I am unmuting you. You are still muted, so you'll have to unmute yourself to be able to speak.
I believe I just did. Can you hear
Yes,
me?
Yes,
we can hear you now.
Microphone is green on my. I live at 272 Willow Avenue. Could you please tell me what the criteria for deciding whether 722 has sufficient historical significance? I understand there was something about the windows being changed. A lot of the audio signal that I'm hearing is sounding very affected by electrical, mechanical sounds rather than human voices. I think somehow there's a internet connection that isn't great. So I didn't hear everything that was said about work that was done on that house. But could you please say something about how you decide whether it has enough historical significance to open it up for the next level of meeting? Thank you.
So thank you.
Before we continue, Francis, could I just get a spelling on your last name for the notes, please?
Mr. Wiley, it sounds like he's having some audio issues, so I'll go ahead and spell it for you. It is
great.
F-A-R-L-E-Y.
Thank you very much.
And to answer your question, the findings, the text, I'll just read what criteria are. Is that there are two levels. There's a historical association, which is that it would be either it's importantly associated with one or more historic persons or events, or with the broad architectural, cultural, political, or economic or social history of the city or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. or historical and architectural significance. This, because of the style, method, building construction in association with a reputed architect or builder of the subject property, either by itself, of in the context of a group of buildings or structures, and therefore is in public interest to be preserved and rehabilitated rather than demolished. So that's the text of the ordinance. And basically was it, in general terms, was it associated with somebody important? Is one thing, a former mayor or something like that, or and the other one is the significance of the structure, style. It's often it could be, it's the role it plays in a streetscape, a historic pattern of buildings, if it contributes to a historic streetscape. So it can either be by itself or within the surroundings. Okay, any other questions or comments?
If there are any further comments on 722 Broadway, please raise your hand and I will go ahead and unmute you. All right, so far I don't see further hands raised, so I'm going to continue going through one more time. I think Francis Farley was accidentally muted after you had finished answering his questions. But that is the only other comment left.
Well then, with that, I guess we should close the public comment portion of this hearing, this case, and take it up as a commission. Who has thoughts on this?
Eric, if I may.
Yes.
The building does retain much of its original form and massing, and it's consistent in design with the one right next door to it, and also consistent in design for the house on the other side of Willow Avenue, which is basically on Willow Avenue is where 720 adjoins. So it would seem to me that these were a consistent design in the street at one time before perhaps 720, and then the house on the other side of 722 bar 1 was demolished and something else built. So I think what we're looking at is one of two in a consistent landscape, both of which have retained their form and massing, and that while they've been covered up with plastic, it does seem that they're quite strong and structurally sound.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ellen.
I would echo those thoughts and also emphasize that the rhythm of these 2 3/4 story houses is very strong on Broadway from Powderhouse Park all the way across Willow Avenue and down Willow Avenue. And it's an important part of that, the neighborhood's architectural rhythm, in addition to the property retaining very clearly its original form and massing.
Thanks, Robin. Anybody else? I'll just inject my thoughts. I guess I would agree with that also. It's that's kind of an interesting little part of the city because those, especially the cross streets, were developed all at once, and you have very consistent streetscapes. And I think that these two properties are, before 720 was built, were kind of a continuation of that. These two have a lot of gambrel facing, facing the street buildings like that. These particular two have kind of an interesting thing going on with it. It's simulated gambrel within a hip kind of thing, which gives them kind of character. So these two and a few around there are like that, but there's a little bit more character that way. As far as integrity, yeah, the original massing is there. It's been, as often happens, the porch was enclosed and it has the siding and the windows and the usual stuff, but you certainly get a sense of what was built there. And we do tend to prioritize situations where you have a pair on the streetscape where there's a building as part of the rhythm, even if it's a smaller one like this, as a twin, which this one does. Also heavily modified the one next to it for the porch that's not the building itself. Those are my thoughts. Who else wants to add anything?
If no one else has further comments, I would move that we vote to find 722 Broadway historically significant.
I would second that
I'll
motion.
second that.
Thank you. All in favor of declaring 722 Broadway significant?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Roll call, Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Bingham,
Yes.
Mr. Wiley.
Yes.
Okay. And now we need to adopt findings for this. And I would suggest that it's not the Part A association, it's the architectural style that its role in the streetscape, particularly its immediate neighbor, retaining form and massing of a building that's very characteristic for that neighborhood, the non-commercial buildings, that is. Most want to tweak that.
If there's no additional language to add to that, I would move that we vote to adopt those findings.
I will second the motion.
Second that.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of adopting those findings? Say aye.
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 Opposed? Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Mr. Bauer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Bingham,
Yes.
and Mr. Wiley.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So applicant, you know the drill here. We're going to come back for a public hearing next month, and we'll determine whether this building ought to be preferably preserved. And
Yes.
anybody, public, that'll be a moment when we might entertain what you have in mind.
Mr. Chair, if I can interrupt, Anne, in regards to 722 Broadway, the deadline to submit the second legal ad fee and the plans have already passed because of the way the spacing between the two meetings is, so you would be on the March meeting.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So we will see you in March.
Thank you.
Good night.
And we need to address 720 Broadway. And so this is not, no, this is officially the applicant is withdrawing. Is that how this works, even though it was never really a grounds for a hearing?
Correct. You still have to make a motion and vote on it, even though technically you don't have purview.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve withdrawing of 720 Broadway?
Make a motion to approve withdrawing 720 Broadway.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Roll call, Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Mr. Bauer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Bingham,
Yes.
and Mr. Wiley.
Yes.
Okay. That one's off. So just because I'm numerically challenged, 75 years, what's the official cutoff at this point? 1958? No,
48, no, 47. Add 25
47.
to our current year,
and 25 to our current year.
1947.
1947. Yeah.
Yeah,
I had to
so,
get a calculator out to figure it out.
so there'll be a few decades here when mid-century architecture is at risk.
Yes.
A slight issue. We don't have a whole lot of it in the city, at least quality. There is some nice stuff. Okay. And then we have under determinations of preferably preserved, we have 17 Allen Street. And we have, this is a request to postpone this to the February hearing. This is for HPC DMO 2021.32, 17 Allen Street. Applicant is Salvatera. So we just need a vote to continue that to February.
I move that we vote to continue this matter to the February meeting.
Okay.
Second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Mr. Falvey?
Yes.
Mr. Bauer?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Bingham?
Yes.
Mr. Wiley?
Yes.
Okay, so that is continued. Other business, the December 14th minutes.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I did not receive the final minutes, but admittedly, I also did not follow up with Mr. Wiley about receiving them. He had sent me the draft minutes, though.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll have to send out the final minutes for review at next meeting. Sorry about that, everyone.
Okay, so that leaves us with a CPC update. What do we have going on there?
Yeah, there's nothing really to update the commission on because actually the CPC meets the night after our meeting for historic preservation. So we're starting a new year, and tomorrow night we'll be discussing basically where we're going for the new year. I think we had a good year for the Historic Preservation Commission. As I think I outlined to everybody before, we were able to tap into the reserve to accomplish all the applications. There is one thing that's going on, which is the Adams Magoon House, which we're looking to now investigate in a more active manner as to exactly what's required in order to make sure that that's properly maintained. The applicant had just looked for windows, but I think planning staff and generally the people on the CPC felt that there was probably more that needed to be looked at in this place because it hasn't been well maintained. So that's going to be the subject of research, and then we'll possibly have an application coming before the commission to review what might be done with the Adams Magoon House, which is, as everybody realizes, on Broadway, and it's the second oldest house in the city. Obviously, the name Adams and Magoon resonate in the city. So apart from that, we've got a lot of things on the agenda. I have a lot of questions with the CPC. One of them was why we're looking at $216,000 to put in a community garden on a single block of land. I think that that's excessive gouging by somebody. I really suspect sometimes that contractors, as soon as they see a CPC application, their eyes sort of light up and they think about buying a new boat or putting their kids through college or something like that. And I see my job is to make sure that this is honest because it's taxpayer money. So I'm being a bit of a watchdog on that. So that's basically all I have to report. I'll know more tomorrow and then I can give a better report next month.
Thanks, Alan. That's a good point. I never really think about that aspect. We tend to view scope and cost and whether we want to fund that, but the review to see is that actually a realistic price for this, what they're suggesting. It's good that you're scrutinizing that.
Yeah, well, one of the things that came back with the Adams Magoon House is a contractor came back after looking at several options, one of which was Home Depot replacement windows, which was a non-starter. But the other one that came back was for $160,000. And I looked at that, thought, well, that's kind of in la-la land. I'm not sure where they got that number from. But, I'm sort of looking at these prices and getting people to justify it. We did that with the church down in East Somerville and got them to justify why the filling of the floor costs more and was there a better application for saving money and getting the same outcome. And they came up with some good numbers on that. So I think if we question this and put them to the test, we can make sure that we get better value for money for the city. But get the job done. It's important we get the job done and get these buildings properly preserved. And also, there's often an opportunity to link this to affordable housing, like the Broadway House and other places like that, where we're working together with other wings of the CPC in sharing funding for projects.
Oh, good.
Mr. Bingham, is there not a requirement for receiving multiple quotes or bids for projects?
There is. There meant to be 3 bids. The Adams Magoon came in with 2, which would have disqualified it anyway. And frankly, I had told the applicant, as had planning staff, I believe Sarah had told the applicant, and several other people, including Brandon Wilson. And, you know, she just didn't comply. I mean, she's she's not perhaps the best person to comply with some of these things, even if they're laid out for her as to what she has to do. You can only take a horse to water, you can't make it drink. Well, you can if you give it a salt lick, but that's beside the point. There's only so much we can do.
Okay.
We're on top of it, Randy.
Well, thanks. We've run out of agenda items to talk about this other. Anything else going? So we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. I'd like to move a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Bingham,
Yes.
Mr. Wiley,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. That wraps it up.
Thank you all. Stay well.
Yeah,
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
stay afloat. We're supposed to get a bit of snow this weekend, I hear.
Yeah. Be safe.
Thank you, everyone.
You too.
Thanks, Eric.
You too. Thanks, guys.
Bye.